Testing.
Hi, Macy. This is Lisa. How are you?
Hello. I am good. How are you doing, Lisa?
Good. Oh, now it's letting me screen share. Okay. It wasn't
Yes.
letting me before, so I wanted to ask for your help, and I will take care of it right now. Thank you. One second.
Yes, no problem. I know some of your group was already in this room while we were wrapping up the opening remarks. So just so you know, everyone in your group should be able to screen share and unmute during the presentation, and also that we will be recording this presentation. And if anyone in your group can let me know, y'all have from 9 to 10 a.m. and it was going to be about 9 to 9:45 with 15 minutes of questions. Do you want to keep track of your time yourself, or would you like me to do any kind of signal?
Lisa, what do you think? I'll defer to you. I don't suppose a signal can hurt.
Would you like, just because this is a longer one, oh,
There's a chat. Let's see if someone.
yeah. Would you like
Oh, okay.
5 minutes or 2 minutes?
Why don't you give us 5?
Okay,
I guess
I'll
I'm
have,
speaking
oh,
on
sorry.
behalf of everyone. If you guys feel differently, let me know.
Okay, awesome. And I'll
Oh,
kind of, since I'm on screen, I will hold my hand up for 5, and I will also put it in the chat, but you don't need to watch the chat or anything.
perfect. Thank you. I'm very backlit. Okay,
All
great.
good.
Thank you.
And then when y'all are ready, you can just let me know and I'll introduce you.
Okay, it is 10 o'clock, isn't it? Okay. I think we're getting there.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Let me check in with my people. Lisa, are we ready? Gabriel?
Yes, I was just trying to figure out how to load the video also, but what I'll do is I'll just swap back and forth.
Okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and get us started. If you guys are ready?
Sounds great, Cheryl. Thanks.
Okay, perfect and good. Everyone's audio is working. Okay. All right, so we're ready, Macy.
Fantastic. Okay, everyone, this is our first presentation of the day, and it is a round table from some wonderful scholars at Purdue Global. Their presentation is titled Empowering Learners, Adult Learner Growth Mindset in First Year Writing, presented by Cheryl Bone, Gabriel Smith, Lisa Tytler, I apologize, and Joseph Weiss.
Thank you, Macy. Good morning, everyone. Just double checking. I put my headset in, and at the event of background barking, can you all still hear me fine? Thumbs up? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so welcome. We're happy you're here with us this morning. We're here to talk with you about a topic that's near and dear to our hearts here at Purdue Global, empowering learners, the adult learner growth mindset in first year writing. All of us, all of the presenters today, we are all first term instructors for the most part. We teach our first term or our second term, sometimes writing course. So we're particularly interested in the first year writing experience and what students bring to the classroom. Miss, you want to go ahead and move us forward? Okay, so here's a brief agenda. I won't read it to you all, but some of the things that we'd like to talk with you about this morning, and we do hope we'll be talking with you, not to you. We'd like to hear from all of you as well, and see what it is that you're doing and how you might apply the growth mindset in your classroom practices. So we have some questions scheduled in along the way, some quotes, some really interesting reflections from our students. So we hope you'll engage with us during the course of the hour. Next slide. Thank you. So to begin, let's all get in the mindset of getting a little introspective here and thinking about our own classrooms. How do your students define themselves as writers? based on your classroom experience and your student population, this could be a loaded question. We'd love to know what you all think and what your experience with your students is. I'm going to try and keep the chat open here. I hear typing. There we go. You're not seeing slides. Oh, is anyone seeing slides?
I am seeing slides.
Okay, great. Christy, I'm not sure what to tell you. I thought it was us, you. I'm sorry, I have no advice other than the advice I would always give a student in a Zoom meeting. Why don't you exit and re-enter and see if that, sometimes a clean connection will do it. Worth a try. Anyone have a thought about how your students define themselves as writers? We've got some, we've got some excellent responses from some of our students and some reflections. Most students don't see themselves as writers. Isn't that the truth? Not writers, not writers. Yes, okay, so that seems to be consensus, doesn't it? Don't see themselves as writers. That's how we see it, what we see typically as well. Oh, the STEM students, sure. Because writing isn't their thing, right? That's not their domain. And I think it's especially tricky for some of those students to realize, oh my gosh, I'm a student. Doesn't matter what the subject matter is, I have to be able to write. Much like getting into the profession, and we talk with our students a lot about no matter what your future career might be, you're going to have to write. Increasingly in our global workplace, you have to be able to write an email. You have to be able to communicate, even in a chat, right? So watching some of these students who writing isn't their first, they're not English majors, they're not humanity majors, realize that they need to be able to write is an interesting process. So we definitely seem to have consensus that by and large, students don't come to writing courses defining themselves as writers. I don't know if I can advance the slides. I don't think so. Lisa, thank you. So let me share a little bit. I'm going to try and get the chat where I can see it. There we go. Let me share a few reflections now from some of our first term writing students. And you guys can listen to these and see if you connect with these, or this is something you might hear from a student. This is from our first term writing course. This would be a 10-week class. So they're in week 8 of the course, doing some reflection. We ask our students to reflect a lot, hoping that they'll be able to recognize their growth as writers. I started this class believing my writing was horrible, which it very well could have been. However, when I completed the Unit 8 assignment, which is an academic research paper, I felt good about the progression of my writing. The area of my writing that showed the most improvement is the organization. Now my writing has a better flow and I'm able to convey my thoughts clearly. Success, right? What more could we ask for? And what more could we hope for our students? Lisa, you want to go to the next one? I think I'll work my way through these. And if you have comments, by all means, please put them in the chat and we can talk about them. Beyond everything else, I do feel more confident as a writer. That means a lot to me. My 7th grade English teacher once told me that I didn't have the writing gene, and I believed her until this course. Yes, they do. They do, Cameron. I agree with you. Think about that. 7th grade. Who knows how old this learner was? And this teacher once told them, and that's what they carried into their academic career in college. Words matter, right? This week in Hawks, we learned about essay components, pre-writing, and much more, but I think I learned the most out of our pre-writing section. I've never been great at pre-writing. To be truthfully honest, I think, and that's a direct quote, to be truthfully honest, I think it's something that I've always dreaded during our seminar yesterday. I think that's what stumped me the most. I'm glad that I've been trying to be more mindful of my own negative thoughts because in a way it helps me snap out of them. Yeah, isn't that amazing, Macy, what they bring? So sad. Why would you do that to someone? Even if they aren't a very good writer, why would you do that to someone? I think the fear of not meeting expectations or somehow causing disappointment is one of the reasons I sometimes struggle writing. I'm usually afraid I'll produce something that my readers will in some way be disappointed with. The writing skill I'm going to use to try to overcome this fear is free writing. I'm going to genuinely try to just get the words onto the paper without thinking about expectations. Later, I can refine and polish what we've written. And doesn't that make you want to stand up and cheer? I know for sure my students are one and done when they start. They want to sit down, get the paper on the page, and call it a day. Free writing is such an important process. Amazed. Okay, see, Cameron, that's it. And that's the joy we find, right, in what we do. Is that our last quote, Lisa? I believe so. Okay. So at this point, think about what you've heard and kind of keep those student comments in mind as we work through this hour together. I'm going to hand it over to Joseph Weiss, who unfortunately had a bit of a family crisis. We'll leave it at that very last minute and took the time to record himself. So if our technical processes work like they should, Joseph will be able to tell you about this. And if not, we'll wing it. I'll mute now, Lisa.
I think I just pressed play, but do I keep my microphone on while I'm pressing play? Yes.
Yes, and there should, if there's
Thanks,
an
everybody, for
issue,
Sorry.
sorry, I was gonna say if there's an issue with it, if you click up on your audio, there should be a option to share your computer audio as well, and that you may need to do that depending on how your Zoom is set up.
It worked for me when it briefly played just now.
Okay, then we're good. I'll press play.
So thanks everybody for letting me join you this way. My apologies for not being able to be here live with you, but maybe next time. Those quotes that Cheryl just shared with you certainly, I think, remind us of our students. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment and how our students' mindsets and their attitudes towards themselves are framed and formed and how those mindsets affect them. But it also personally, I think, should resonate with us individually. I know it does with me. I remember back in graduate school and back in 1987, I was ready to write a dissertation, and my advisor basically told me that the topic that I wanted to write about, which was The Outsider and Chaucer, really just wasn't appropriate, mostly because he recognized I was going to be writing it from a queer point of view. But that attitude that he presented to me about me as a writer and about my topic, for example, affected me. And it certainly, I think, was compounded by the fact that as a first-generation student growing up in rural Alabama, where nobody in my family had ever gone to school beyond the 8th grade, for example, I had doubts about myself to begin with. But what he said to me in 1987, literally at the point where I was about to start a dissertation, impacted me for 35 years. And I sat on an unfinished dissertation for 35 years. And it wasn't until I worked with a really wonderful advisor at a different college that I was actually able to pick it back up and actually make it happen and finalize that degree after 35 years. But I recognized that along the way, over those 35 years, that I was impacted by his attitude and my own feelings towards myself as a writer, and that it certainly reminds me of the idea of the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. You can see here from the slide on the screen that scientists tell us that we either belong to the fixed mindset or the growth mindset, and that if we are of the fixed mindset, we tend to, for example, avoid challenges, that we don't like to get feedback, we don't listen to it necessarily, that we look at failure as a problem rather than an opportunity to grow, for example, and that we don't view challenges as opportunities to grow and improve ourselves, and that we believe, if we're of the fixed mindset, that whatever our talents are, that they're static, that they can't be improved, that they can't grow, they can't ever change. Those quotes remind me of that because students may have been in their past, just like me, told that they're not good writers, that they don't have writing capabilities, that they're bad writers, and they carry that trauma and those attitudes and feelings with them throughout their college experience. Joe Bowler is probably the most familiar scientist to write about the fixed mindset and growth mindset and how we as teachers actually must take it upon ourselves to change the way our students look at themselves, particularly, I think, within the writing classroom. Now, of course, Joe Bowler's research was on math students. She was a math teacher and wrote about how within her class, for example, students saw themselves as either being good at math or not good at math, and that it was very difficult to change their attitudes. The same thing applies to the writing classroom. Both Joe Bowler and Carol Dweck argue that we really have to change our attitudes towards ourselves in order for us to be able to actually make changes in our lives, for us to be able to become better writers or scientists, for example, or mathematicians in the case of Joe Bowler. You may be familiar with Amanda Janke and Megan Truax, though. They have applied Joe Bowler and Carol Dweck's research to the writing classroom and argue that the writing instructor faces an equal challenge that the math instructor, like Joe Bowler, faced, that our students' anxiety and their perception of themselves, they control and determine the success in our classrooms, whether or not our students will do well. That whatever anxiety, whatever stress, whatever trauma, whatever past experiences that these students have experienced, not only do they bring them, but it will color everything that they do, and they may bring to our writing classroom the attitude that they simply cannot do it. Janke and Truax, though, argue that we can, in fact, just like Joe Bowler argues, make a difference in our students' lives, that we actually can change the way they perceive themselves. Bowler argued that in order to do that, we have to let our students know what the science of growth mindset actually is. And the science of neuroplasticity is a fascinating field. If you don't know anything about it, here are a few resources, Moser and Ng, that you might want to take a look at. One of the things that Bowler argues effectively is that if we tell our students that the mind actually is capable of change, that just like patients who have suffered from a stroke, for example, the mind can compensate for traumatic events in our lives, whether they're physical or psychological, for example, and that if we allow ourselves, we actually can re-envision ourselves as writers, for example. We can allow the brain to compensate for those areas where we have told ourselves we are not capable, we are not good, we are not a writer, for example. Growth mindset, as Ng says, tends to self-regulate learning and have it gives us the propensity to cope with academic tasks. So if somehow or another we're able to convince our students that their minds can change, that they actually are not limited in their learning, for example, and that whatever they believe about themselves negatively, that actually can change. That, for example, with writing, it's not an art, but a skill that can be taught and learned and improved, for example, that will begin to change our students' attitudes. And that, according to Moser, for example, students who have this growth mindset attitude, they become far more receptive, for example, to feedback from us as instructors or from their classmates, for example, which gives them more opportunity to grow, to learn, and improve as writers. I know, for example, just simply having somebody sit down with me every 2 weeks for a 1.5 year period while I was writing my dissertation, an advisor who listened to me, who let me talk about my challenges and my doubts about myself, my own fears that I really couldn't do it despite being an otherwise capable and successful adult, for example, that helped me to rethink myself as a writer. and believe a little more firmly that I actually could do it. Of course, that meant that I had to listen to feedback. I had to grow from it. And that allowed me, of course, then to grow better as a writer, to improve the writing that I now produce. I think, for example, now, just since working with my advisor, my writing skills have improved greatly, and I happen to be 62 years old. I wouldn't have thought that at this point in my life that my mindset could change and grow, but that experience with that advisor allowed me to make that leap into the growth mindset. There's more to the science of neuroplasticity, of course, but if you go to Ng and Moser, and they'll be in the references at the end of the presentation, you'll learn a little bit more about this and how you as a teacher can actually work with your students. Because one of the things that Truax, for example, says is that it is our own attitudes as teachers towards writing and towards our students that makes the difference, actually. That if we present our feedback to our students in a negative way, if, for example, all we do is circle problematic areas in a student's paper, for example, that reinforces the closed mindset of any given student. But if we, for example, focus on feed-forward feedback, for example, that will allow students to re-envision themselves as writers and the writing process itself. So our own attitudes towards our students, seeing them as writers, telling them that they are writers, and everything we do reinforcing the fact that we believe in them as writers will help our students to change their mindset. Now, we're going to turn back to Cheryl now for a moment to take a look at a little bit more about adult learners and how they are particularly challenged by this issue of the closed mindset versus the growth mindset. And then Gabriel and Lisa are going to continue this conversation with you about what we can do specifically within our classroom to improve our students' mindset and allow them to embrace neuroplasticity so that they can actually grow as learners and writers, no matter what their age. Thank you so much, though. I hope next time I can talk with you live. I'll see you then.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Lisa. We're seeing your smiling face, Lisa, not the slides. There we go. Now we're seeing your sliding face on the side, which is great. Smiling face. Okay, so let's follow up. And that ran very smoothly. So thanks to our technical guru over there, Lisa. Let's talk about what Joseph asked. How does age shape a student's perception of their writing abilities and their identity as a writer? It's an interesting question. Not sure. I need to get our chat back so I can see what's going on. There we go. Not sure about the ages and demographics of your students. We see a lot of adult learners, working adults. The majority of our students are working adults. Many of them have returned to school after a long time away. Most of them are juggling families and work and children and aging parents and all the things that we all juggle. So they come in, I don't want to use the word frazzled, but they come in uncertain for sure, especially those returning after perhaps a tumultuous or negative prior learning experience. Some of our older students have misconceptions about their ability as writers just because of their lack of technical skills. They figure if they can't even open a Word document, how in the world are they going to write something on that Word document? They have a big learning curve. So anyone have a thought that they'd like to share about age? Let's see here. Rather for mindset. Yes, Macy, that's an interesting point. You are, Lisa. Do we know too much for our own good at this point? Very nervous about academic writing. The other thing I've noticed, and if any of you have had this experience, you can share it as well. Military students in particular, and we have some partnerships with the military, so we do get some military students, and they're wonderful students. They're committed, they're dedicated, they're timely, but they have a whole different language they write in. And it's hard for them to transfer that, and it causes a lot of uncertainty for them, I've seen. Ingrained early negative perceptions, like we spoke about earlier, Cameron. Yes, and I think Joseph tells a powerful story of his own, right? 30 years that instructor shut him down for. Correct. Oh, Macy, that's an important distinction too, isn't it? They say that's their self-perception, but no, it isn't a fact. That's a nice segue into our next slide too. Yes, the confidence there. Yes. Oh, Emily Jo, that's important. That's important. Yeah. How do you challenge that? Lisa asks a great question. And that's a big mistake. And you're doing not just your student a disservice, you're doing yourself as an instructor, as a professional, as a human being, a disservice as well. Anyone that wants to talk about that, that's where we're going with this next slide. Imposed identities. Students come with a perception of their own. And in fact, as Emily Jo pointed out, maybe instructors assign that perception to them as well. Thinking about the connection between writing and personal growth. What that means, what that consists of, is the idea that writing can play a significant role in helping people, individuals, students, grow and develop as people, as individuals, as human beings. And how might that be? Why would that be? Let's catch up here on the chat. Yes, yes, yes. That awareness that doesn't always exist. So let's talk about this. How could success as a writer in a classroom encourage, support, help personal growth? It seems like a minor thing, but it really isn't a minor thing for our students. What do you all, what's your experience with this? How do you empower your students to kind of move from their preconceptions and embrace the idea that they can grow as writers? One thing that we do in some of in one of our assignments in our first term English course is we vary the kinds of writing we ask students to do. So we work on the connection between reading and writing, personal communication, professional communication, and academic communication. Yes, 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 Gabriel. Make those connections so that they can see how it can apply. We have our students write a TED Talk as one of our assignments. And we talk a lot about, we ask them in that to share an experience they've had in an effort, in an attempt to guide or motivate, inspire their audience. Yes, they have been doing more writing than traditional students and in lots of different contexts. When writing this TED Talk script, we pushed them a little bit. I just taught this yesterday, and it was really powerful. The class derailed in the most amazing way. We were talking about topics and checking in that, you know, everyone had decided on their topic and their choice was appropriate and they had support and all these things. And it just went sideways, and students started, as they told talked about their topics, they shared why they chose it, their personal experience with the topic. And it became this beautiful conversation about experiences, both positive and negatives. And it was amazing how many of them had shared circumstances, situations, experiences, and they really kept it appropriate to the assignment, academic conversation. But it was amazing the sharing that took place, and they were able to generalize what we were doing in the classroom, the sharing that was going on, and what it meant to them, to the greater world. Several said, why can't this kind of conversation happen elsewhere? Why can't this conversation happen in the real world? Wow, it was super powerful. Towards communities. Yes, we do that in Gabriel or Lisa, you'd probably be better qualified to talk about it than I am, but we do have students do that in our second term writing course. And it's very powerful for them to do that. So all of these things help our students change their self-perception and how they define themselves. I'm going to mute now, and so thank you for sharing your experiences, and I'm going to pass the torch.
Thank you, Cheryl. Everyone can hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you. So thank you, Cheryl, and thank you for being here today. So as Cheryl was, no, you can't hear me? Okay,
Just
you
a
can
little
hear
louder. We can hear you, Lisa,
Okay.
but you're soft compared to my big
Okay.
mouth. You're soft.
me. Okay. Better now? Okay, I'll come closer. So our courses, as Cheryl and Joseph were describing, require a weekly seminar where students come into a Zoom room with the instructor and we explore the week's concepts and the skills and the content. And it's really a wonderful opportunity to engage in meaningful discussion and help skill building. It's also an opportunity to practice some of these ideas of becoming a writer, right? To disorient their idea of I'm a bad writer, I'm a non-writer, and allow them to embrace other concepts and other ideas. So what I'm going to discuss with you, and then what Gabriel discussed with you, is the practical application of the research that we just looked at. So in my seminars, we'll begin with what I call a writing meditation, and that looks at quotes from different published writers like Lamott and Shapiro and Joan Didion, and we will explore and find motivation and inspiration in some of the words and the quotes. And what students will do is I'll pause for it's usually like 3 or 5 minutes. We'll read the quote together. Sometimes they'll journal, sometimes they'll share, sometimes they'll just remain silent and kind of meditate on the quote that we're looking at. And I shared some of them on the screen with you. But what I find in the discussion is that students attach to these quotes and actually help them redefine how they see themselves as writers. And they'll attach to the quote like gentle with oneself. And I had a student last term, and every week I reminded him to be gentle with himself. We saw it in the quote. And then every week he would remind the class, be gentle with yourself, be gentle with myself. And then he would kind of report how he was being gentle with himself as writers, which is kind of the opposite of what Joseph was explaining, sort of the beatdown that we often give ourselves, or sometimes that instructors will even give the students. And I know I experienced that as a student, sort of the mental beatdown, but how can we be gentle with ourselves? And then they'll explore it with practical application of actually what that looks like. Or maybe writing decreases our sense of isolation. Or how about take that shimmer that show us your humanity. So beginning seminar each week with one of these quotes, and we do this for 10 weeks, encourages our adult learners to change how they perceive themselves so they can actually create and embrace new identities and also find their writing voice. Because in high school and even in college, we don't talk a lot about our writing voice. What is your writing voice? How do you sound on the paper? How do you want to appear on the paper? How do you want to present yourself on the paper? And it's very different than how we might present ourselves in the outside world, right? So through exploring the quotes, the students find meaning and they begin to see that they're capable of changing and they're capable of becoming writers. And they build confidence, which is very sweet to see. I even build confidence as an instructor because I'll try to adapt one of the quotes that we're looking at. And that these short explorations each week just allow them to see that they are able to become more. And it only takes 4 to 5 minutes. Sometimes it'll take a little bit longer, sometimes shorter, but it's a real game changer in terms of their breaking apart that imposed identity and seeing themselves as different. So what we'll also do in the seminars is what I call intentional interactions. And I'll sprinkle that throughout the hour for them throughout the term. And in the article, Gaps in Student Belonging and Academic Co-Curricular Services, Mal Reeder explains, students who say that they feel strongly about their institution usually on average use 3 to 4 support services. So I don't know about you all and how many services your university provides, but Purdue Global provides many. But what happens is students come into the class, they're given all these assignments, discussion boards, seminars, everything's attached to grade, and they forget that their good tuition dollars are actually paying for these services to use. And so I'll remind them it's a little bit like going to Costco, where you have your membership, you can shop there, but they also give free samples and go and enjoy, a couple snacks. So how can the university support them, and how can we as faculty and instructors remind our students to use these services, because that's intentional. That's saying I have a gap in my learning, or I have a gap in my confidence, or I have a gap in my this one particular skill, but let me go to the writing center. Let me go to student services. Let me connect with a tutor. And let me even write my instructor, and I can fill that gap. And when we fill that gap with something intentional, then we're taking a worry, we're taking a concern, we're taking a doubt, and we're filling with an actionable plan that we can then succeed. So again, it's a way to get to the other side of the thinking about ourselves as or themselves as a non-writer, as a bad writer, and say we don't have to be everything, and we don't have to be good at everything. There are people who can help us, and our good tuition dollars pay for that. And why not leverage some of that support? And the article explains that the students who use these supports are more likely to succeed, more likely to love their college experience, and more likely to succeed when they graduate. So the last slide that I want to share with you is, in addition to showing the learners and talking to the students about the support, we'll also talk about some of these soft skills that help them become students. And there's not a whole lot of talk. I didn't have any in high school or in college about what kind of student are you? How do you student? And it still confuses me. How do I student? I student just through anxiety. Anxiety gets me through the classes, but that's not a very healthy way to student. And when I try to think about how I student, I'm just overridden with anxiety and pressure and stress. And so we'll pause and we'll explore throughout every seminar, what's a soft skill that allows you to student better? Right? And if you have none and you ride on anxiety, how can we cultivate these skills, right? What are the skills? And so in the first seminar in Unit 1, we'll talk about some of the life skills that they want to improve, or maybe it's their strong area and they might be able to share it in the seminars with other people. And it really comes down to time management, right? So none of us can really manage time. Time typically manages us, but it also then becomes about who steals our time, right? It's often who or what steals our time. And some of those are non-negotiable. Families, work, right? We have to pay the bills, we have to attend to family, but are there emotional vampires? And that opens up a really healthy conversation for them to say, who can we say no to? What can we say no to for a couple weeks, right? And I tell them, just tell them that your instructor is very strict, say no. Also, how can they de-stress? How can they maybe create some creativity in their life, some opportunities for play? How can they find rest, right? How can they be more mindful? And these are all soft skills that we'll look at. And we were kind of tasked this year with creating an approach to using AI in an ethical way, and showing our students how to engage with some of these AI apps. And so what I'll do in the seminars is I'll take one of the questions that we're looking at, one of the soft skills you can see on the screen, finding an authentic writer's voice, and we'll plug it into ChatGPT for a couple minutes in the seminar. We see what it spits out, and then we'll study it for a minute. And so what you see on the screen is what ChatGPT told us about how to find an authentic writer's voice. And our first-term students don't know their voice. Many of them don't know their voice. Many of them have never even met themselves on the page, which is kind of daunting, right? So it's filled with fear, especially a blank page. Like, how do I look on the page? And so we'll look through what ChatGPT is telling us, and they know that it's ChatGPT because I'm screen sharing. And then they'll look for something that they attach to. So in the first seminar where I held, the last one, Stay True to Assignment Guidelines, was where every student was fixed. And every student just wanted to hold by the rubric, just wanted to hold by the assignment. I said, okay, we're going to look at this again next week, and just to see if we can just explore a little bit more, right? Is there room there for some play? Is there room there to challenge something that feels a little uncomfortable? Because we've got in that place of creative tension, the opportunity to really grow. That doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all. But there is space there in that tension, in that conflict, to become more. And so the second week we did that, many students moved up one. Now, I don't know if it was just visually that they were just like, okay, let's go from stay true to assignment guidelines to embracing vulnerability, or if they were just saying, hey, this is really uncomfortable, let me embrace a little vulnerability, right? Either way, we had a conversation about how vulnerable do we need to be? Where's our comfort? Where can we stretch? Where can we push? And more importantly, how can we create a safe space in this writing class so that everyone can be vulnerable? The third time we did this, people moved the students move to the first column, know yourself and be genuine. And there we see this movement towards, I've got a voice, I have a story to tell, and I want to see myself on the page. So through these 3 exercises of, meditations, becoming a writer, intentional interactions, and then also using ChatGPT in an ethical way, exploring some of these soft skills to students better, we're able to support our first term students and our adult learners to really think beyond that imposed identity and begin to see themselves as a writer who has a story to tell. So thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Gabriel now. Actually, I'm going to pass it over to Cheryl and then Gabriel.
Yep. I'll interject here for just a minute. And then you get to listen to Gabriel, who has lots to share. So perfect question following Lisa's amazing sharing. She is an absolute inspiration to me to set the tone in a classroom for sure. How do you create belonging and community in your writing classes? And why does that matter? I know that when I have a group, as Lisa said, we meet, for class once a week. And when I have a group that engages really well together in our online classroom, in our seminar, it's very clear in the discussions that they have, in the discussion boards that we share. The quality of the discussions directly correlate to the quality of the interaction we have in our online seminars. And I can only attribute that to creating that sense of belonging, and they feel a part of a community. It impacts the way that they write and share in the classroom. Anyone have a thought on that? I have definitely seen that pattern, and I love it when that happens. Absolutely, Cameron. Everything they share, even in the most academic writing, I agree. And so many students hesitate to do that because of their prior conceptions of themselves, their misconceptions of their abilities, wherever they may stem from. And that's different for everyone, but it is absolutely an exercise in vulnerability. And when I'm encouraging students to share in our live seminars, I always tell them there's a risk reward proposition in front of you, because you have to take a risk to share your writing. But if you share it in our live class, the reward, you get all the brains in the room. All of us can think and help you and work together on your writing. So the risk is sharing your writing, but the reward is all the brains in the room. So very much something that needs to be encouraged. Silliness settles that. Yes. Lets the tension go, right? I love it. Thank you all. So Gabrielle's going to continue on with this idea of community building. So Gabrielle, I will mute and you can pick up where I left.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. And Lisa, can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up, you got it, Missy? Okay, thanks. So as we started talking about ways to empower our writing students, my mind instantly went to the importance of building a sense of community in the classroom. At Purdue Global, students are required to take an entry-level research writing course designed to give them the tools for persuasive academic research writing. This course, it's College Composition 2, asks students to identify a specific problem in their community or workplace, and it's the nature of the community itself that really serves as the foundation for their research projects. We call this project the Idea for Change, and it should be something that students can eventually implement into their communities. When I introduced this research project during the first live seminar, I always tell my students that the Idea for Change project isn't just an essay or a presentation that they'll be working on for class. Fundamentally, a successful idea for change should be implementable. And that's when I shared this example with them. A couple years ago, I had a student who was writing her Idea for Change project about the unhoused population of her community, Colorado Springs. As she was working through the course content and completing her assignments, she also started a winter coat drive in her community. By the end of the term, she had successfully collected and distributed over 300 winter coats to those in need. And that, I tell my students, is what we're looking for. Engaging the community, building upon the community, and actively supporting others in the community is an important part of the Idea for Change, and that's exactly what this student accomplished with her work. As we talk about the nature of community and the role that it plays in college composition too, we also start to build our own safe community where we can exchange ideas, feedback, and help each other grow as writers. Lisa, if you could skip to the next slide, please. Thank you. One of the strategies that I use to help build genuine connections between student writers is through the use of breakout sessions in live seminars. I tend to use breakout sessions during the first 3 seminars of the term, and then again during Unit 7. In our first week, after introducing the Idea for Change project, I'll break students into small groups and explain that this is an opportunity for them to get to know each other a little bit. I encourage them to use their microphones, introduce themselves, and then to do some small group brainstorming as they discuss problems that they see in their own communities or workplaces. I'll typically allocate maybe 10 minutes to these sessions in order to empower my students to take charge of their own ideas for change. In Unit 2, we'll revisit the breakout session, but this one is used specifically to generate ideas for their Unit 2 assignment. Students share ways in which they have had to rely on persuasion in the various contexts of their lives, and that simple act of sharing can help inspire new ideas, especially in students who are struggling to identify the routine acts of persuasion and writing in their own lives. In the Unit 3 seminar, we dedicate breakout sessions to generating possible ideas for change in their communities. And this is where students directly benefit from the assistance of their classmates, further cementing the notion that they are a community of writers. After each breakout session ends, I always ask the same simple question: how did that go? If you could skip to the next slide, Lisa, thank you. Here are some of the responses from recent seminars. Notice responses from the Unit 1 seminar tend to be very short and non-descriptive, but that's to be expected. These students have just met each other and likely haven't even encountered each other in the discussion board yet, so it's understandable that they might be a little reluctant to dive into the initial breakout session. Breakout sessions from Units 2 and 3 are much more focused on idea generation, and student responses clearly demonstrate that they appreciate the feedback provided by their classmates. My favorite student response in this slide is from Unit 3, and the quote is, "I feel much more confident in my topic now," and that is the power of a supportive community. If we can move to the next slide, Lisa, thank you. Thanks. Over the last few months, I've been adapting the language from College Composition 2 course into a self-paced module-based course. With each little tweak of an assessment or a rubric revision, I found myself thinking about ways to build community in the module version of the course. Since our seminar sections give students the opportunity to engage with each other in breakout sessions and in weekly discussions, I thought that it might be fun to implement a strategy designed to encourage module students to start developing a sense of class-wide community as well. So I launched a pilot in an attempt to get my students talking about what they've been reading, how it connects to the community, and how they'll be using it to advance their own idea for change. This was a follow-up to a presentation that Lisa and I worked on last year with another colleague, and that colleague recently shared the result of the pilot with attendees at NOS 2024. The long and short of the pilot was this: no students really came to my extended office hours to discuss what they were reading. Nobody even really engaged in the Google quiz that I had set up. So I'm still pondering new ways to encourage the community building in these modular courses so that my students can feel the same kind of support and acknowledgement and community that seminar students enjoy as well. If you can skip to the next slide, please. Thank you. In addition to using breakout sessions to help build and shape a community of writers, I also make it a point to clearly establish expectations for participating in discussions. We carefully review discussion samples and rubrics in Unit 1, and we address expectations for weekly participation. The goal of our discussions is to support and encourage each other as we build a stronger sense of community, and part of that comes from effectively modeling participation behavior to our students. I'm active in my classroom discussions every day of the week. I want my students to know that I'm there, and see that I'm a part of their community. In addition to nudging students in new directions, I'll also make sure to celebrate student successes, not just with initial discussion posts, but with replies to their classmates as well. When I see a student who went all in with a peer review, or who clearly invested time and thought into helping their classmates, I'll offer public acknowledgement of that. A little encouragement, even in the discussion board, can really go a long way in bolstering student confidence and showing them that they are a valued member of our community. With that, I'd like to turn things back over to Cheryl. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Gabriel. And this is perfect timing at our 5-minute mark here. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk in our remaining minutes. How do you encourage adult learners to embrace their own writing voices and identities? Everything we've talked about today contributes to that. Do you have a trick? There's probably no trick. It's a long game, right? What do you do? What do you find works with your adult learners? And if we run out of time to discuss this very far, we would like to encourage you all to leave with that thought on your mind. How can you encourage your students, young, old, or otherwise, to embrace their own voices and understand that their words matter? How do you help them find their identity as a writer? Macy, I'm going to defer to you at this point. I'm sure we're near to time. So you tell me if we should continue or if time's up.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the end of the presentation time, but it's moving into question and answer. So if
Excellent.
anyone wants to answer the discussion question you have up, as well as ask any questions about what you talked about today, we could just leave that for the
Perfect.
next 10 minutes.
Excellent. Okay, so great timing, actually.
Yeah.
What do you all think? What can you share with us? What resonated with you of what we of what we put in front of you today? What hit home? What resonated with you as an educator and perhaps as a student? Joseph and Lisa both shared their experiences being students themselves. So tell us how you feel.
Yeah, and feel free if you'd like to, you can unmute or, raise your hands or even just put something in the chat. Oh yeah, Cameron here is asking about the TED Talk.
Sure, Lisa, you want to talk about Unit 4, or you're more eloquent than I am?
I don't know that I am, but first, thank you for the question. So in Unit 4, students are tasked to create a TED Talk where it's a personal writing assignment, and they choose a topic connected to their field of study. So it's connected to something that they're learning in the university, loosely connected most of the time, but that they've had some kind of challenge in their life with. So let's say if they're an accounting student, maybe they've had a challenge with budgeting. If they're a nursing student, maybe they had a challenge or some kind of experience that they had to overcome with caring for a family member. And it's usually very often for adult learners, it's typically a life experience, right, that has sort of motivated them to pursue that degree. Sometimes it's a boss or, a manager saying you need this degree in order to, move up. But more often than not, they're inspired by some kind of life experience. And so this allows them the opportunity to share their story. It's a short assignment. It's a couple paragraphs, 3 to 4 paragraphs, but they share their story. And then they also offer the solution that they use in their own life. So the goal is not necessarily to motivate the audience to take a change, but it's to offer and say, hey, this is how I solve the issue in my life. And, maybe it'll help you. So they're understanding their audience, they're understanding how personal writing is important, and they're understanding how they solve something. They became competent and overcame that adversity or that challenge in their life and connected to their field of study. Every assignment in the first term writing class at Purdue Global is connected to their field of study. So they're learning a little bit more in a loose way without immersing in research, but they're also learning that they have a story to tell, that they are part of this collective group that is engaged in the topic in nursing and accounting and teaching, and that they have something to say. And so because it's so early in the term, it's also a nice opportunity to build confidence in them in terms of what they know and what they're bringing to the class and what they're bringing to the field of study.
Do you record them? I'm curious. You actually have them record?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So students have 2 choices. They can either write out the script of the TED Talk, or they can create a PowerPoint and then with the script, so that way they have the opportunity, if they're not, if maybe they're more creative or maybe they're nervous about the paragraphing, there is a word count for both. I've had 1 or 2 students who have recorded it. It's not required, but I think they were just excited about it. So they did so, and they asked if they could share, the final in the discussion board. And I said yes, but it's not part of the assignment. But they do get excited because they feel like, TED Talk is everyone knows TED Talk in the class, and they feel excited that they can motivate or inspire others to, to overcome a challenge.
In addition to what Lisa just said, I'll tell you that I had a couple of students this term ask me when they're going to present their TED Talks to the class. And I said, I am more than happy to set aside some time next week. Once you complete it and submit it, we will give you the stage. So and I find it's not necessarily the most confident students. In my experience, the students that realize they've overcome something and they've shared their story in a poignant way in their TED Talk, those are the ones that want to share it. So it's really interesting giving them options and choices. And maybe they're not quite there yet with the live audience, if you will. But as Lisa said, a recording is a way for them to use their voice and speak their truth out loud, but in a more private way. So there's lots of options. And I think there's a takeaway in that too, that when we don't put their walls against a back, they can do things in the way that works best for them and their learning style as well.
Yeah, thanks much.
On that note with recording, I found that younger students and the older students really value them a lot more than like the 18 to 21-year-olds, because for traditional students, their big community kind of is college. But for younger students, their family is still a community. And then for older students, they might have their own family that is now a community, and they have people they really want to share these kinds of things with. They like a producible thing they can take with them.
Yes, and share it outside of context of the classroom, right? They might, present it to their family or their peers or something, and that's really empowering. I think you're absolutely right.
Anyone else have any questions for our presenters?
Thank you to all of you who shared and used your voice here to, share your experiences with us. It's helpful. And I think when there's collaboration, it makes it nicer for everyone. So yes, as Gabriel said in the chat, thank you so much for being here and for participating with us.
Yeah, this was oh, we do have a question regarding faculty training. Ooh, cool. Yes. What is your question? Feel free, and I do apologize if it is Mozine or Mozina. Feel free to either unmute and share your question, or you can type it out about faculty training.
Hello there, this is Mohsin Bensaid, and from the Writing Communications Center at Ashland University. My question is regarding what your institution does to prepare faculty in terms of growth mindset and applying it in the classroom. If it's intentional about that.
Lisa, that's all you.
Hi, Mohsin. It's good to see you. I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember specifically the training, but we've all been there for about 18 to 20 years. So I know that we've had training. A lot of what we presented on today is our own research that we'll actually bring back to our department and share with them. So we created the we found the research, created the PowerPoint, and then delivered it to the department. But we do have access to LinkedIn Learning, and our department chair does ask us to to engage in that. And then there's multiple trainings from the Center of Teaching and Learning that they'll invite us to take, and also sometimes require us to take. So, and Gabriel was saying there's also the ACUE training at PG that many faculty engage in.
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't know if that was something from programmatic or mostly faculty led, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like what Cheryl said. This is something we've thought about as we try to think how we mentor in the Writing Center, how we can teach faculty to do the same. And sometimes it's just the kind of people that are drawn to the work. And like, how do you teach the passion or the drive to be interested in these kinds of things is an interesting question.
We have twice a month what we call an educators exchange, and a lot of the ideas surface from that. And it's really just a place for instructors to connect, and we will, we sign up in the beginning of the year. Usually our department leads are not there, so that way we don't feel the pressure of performance. And it's more of an opportunity to explore the ideas. And often instructors will come to the educators exchange to either learn or to try out an idea to see if it would work in a conference or if there's like-minded people. And it's kind of low stakes, very supportive environment. And I can't tell you, Mohsin, that that's training, but it does actually become something fruitful and worth exploring. And then you also know what ideas would work and what ideas don't work, and you usually leave with some sort of collaborative spirit or idea that you could take to a conference or research more fully.
That is amazing. And I think that definitely does a lot for your, faculty culture. And, it sounds like those lunches are modeling what y'all are trying to model for classrooms as well. Wow, cool. Well, this was a lovely first presentation to start the day. It's already generated, a lot of conversation and gotten people comfortable with using the chat feature too, which is nice. So we know we've got some engagement for the rest of the day. Thank you guys again from Purdue Global for your presentation. And now we have about 10 or 15 minutes before our next one, which is going to be another roundtable with Rochester University's Melissa St. Pierre, Brittany Briggs, and Jessica Robbins. So we'll see you guys there at 10:15. Well, my time, 10:15, the 15-minute mark.